Hi, welcome to Clutter Bravado.
Yes, and it's the energy. It's not just about the stuff.
So we should probably just get into it, right?
Let's go.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. It's a beautiful Monday.
It is. We match.
We-
We're wearing very similar outfits.
Except
Black
that-
turtlenecks.
Black turtlenecks.
And
And has
no
long
sleeves.
sleeves. It was cold this morning. We had our first rainy weekend.
We did. We did have our first
So-
rain. It felt really good, but it was also a little bit. It's like dangerous for it to rain right after fires, and so there's a little bit of some concern. But it seems that everything went okay.
I think so. Probably helped
Everything-
out.
Yeah.
But it was chilly. This morning was really cold.
Have you seen the mountains yet?
Yeah.
Oh, that's one of my favorite things about LA is you can look out and see the mountains in one direction and then the ocean in the other. But back on I don't even know what mountain range it is. I don't know anything
It's
about
low.
geography. Yes, low. So much snow.
Yeah.
Snow-capped peaks. Stunning. I love
It's
it.
the beautiful, and today is like a beautiful day. So yeah,
really is,
those
yeah.
are little winter days in Los Angeles that are kind of gorgeous.
So good. It's so good.
And this weekend, my daughter and her partner were down visiting,
Yeah.
so that was really fun. You did spend a little bit of time with us, which was
It was
amazing.
awesome. So I love Chloe. I love her so much, and her girlfriend Alex. They're just the sweetest. Anytime that they're in town, I want to hang out with them because I want to be their friend. I think
And,
I like them so much.
Yeah, and you got my nickname. So that
Oh,
was
I
kinda
like
fun.
that you brought it up because
yeah,
when
I needed to bring it
initially you
up.
were just like, as long as you don't say it on the podcast, then it's fine. But now I can. We played a game of Scrabble, and I discovered that your nickname is Larry. Okay, yes, I know, Laurent. Yes, okay, makes sense. Larry,
What if that was my real name?
Larry Rebuffle.
What if it was that my real name? And in fact, I am just from Texas. And
Yeah, you've
the
been
French
faking.
thing has been
You've been faking it the whole time.
Yeah.
That's not the first time I've thought of that.
You
I've considered, I've really thought about it sometimes where I'm like, what if all of this is a farce?
It's just completely fake. I'm actually from Texas. Larry
Oh yeah,
Ruffalo.
let out your real accent then.
All right, let's stop that. But yeah, it
Wait,
was
you don't
very
have
fun.
you don't have an American accent?
I can't.
Really?
No.
I don't have a French accent. I could probably try, but it would
You
would
probably
feel
would do
offensive.
better than me with an American accent.
I want you to do it. I feel like you should do it.
Okay, we'll practice. We'll try it next time.
Oh, next time? Fine. Larry.
Y'all.
Y'all. You did
Y'all.
say y'all,
Y'all.
unironically the other day too. Y'all. It doesn't sound right with a French accent at all.
I just can't do it. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
And
so,
I've been here only 30 years, so it's,
That's true.
In 30 years. Ouch. Okay, whatever.
30 years is a long time to not have a good Southern accent.
Or a
Prepared.
good American accent, period.
Period. Yeah.
But I can augment my French accent if you want to.
No, that's boring.
Okay, fine. I practiced so many times. I went to acting school.
Acting school? Did you take an acting class?
No.
Never? It's actually a really good thing to do just for character building. Like, it's a really fun...
Yeah, it would be.
I took an acting class for 6 months. I mean, I am an actor. But, I took an incredible acting class for 6 months. And during that time, I would say that, it kind of revolutionizes the way that you look at your own emotions and how you act in the world. You should try it.
Okay.
Yeah. And maybe,
plan.
by accident, you'll end up a movie star or something.
2025.
Anything's possible.
Anything's possible.
Speaking of new beginnings in 2025, I look a little bit different today.
Yeah, just a tiny bit.
Maybe just a little bit. Nobody's seen it yet. I haven't posted it. I put it in my story on my Instagram on Wednesday when I got it done, but I haven't been posting anything. I just I was waiting for the big reveal. So couple of things. Number one, I went to Sally Hershberger Salon, and I saw Alex. So don't be mad, because I'm going to talk about how handsome he is for just a second.
I'm okay. He was very handsome.
He was so handsome, right?
I'm like, yeah.
Okay, so it's not just me. So
No.
I'm not the only one who feels that way.
Yeah, no, I
You were also, you agreed that he's kind of a...
smitten for...
Smitten.
Smitten. But that was
Yeah.
smitten. And
You swooned a little bit. I think
I did,
everybody
and
in there swooned a little bit.
I swooned because, I mean, he's very handsome.
Yes.
He has a great voice.
He does.
And then he cuts his hair with, I mean, he's European.
Yes.
And then he had a style, and you said, oh my, just say it, because it was just a perfect moment.
No, because he's holding my hair and he's cutting it like there's like this big, he's like using a big arm movement as he's cutting, and it looks very dramatic, I thought. And so I said, wow, that like you're very dramatic with the way that you cut. And he's like, not drama. Like, it's not drama. It's swag. And I was like, excuse me,
I
Alex.
loved it.
Excuse me. But no, it was great. We had like an awesome consultation. And he did an incredible job. And he really took his time to make sure that like all of my curls were addressed. Like all of them were taken care of. And it's a cut that's really easy to maintain. I didn't do anything to my hair this morning. I put some of the product that he recommended like into it, and I just like used my fingers and just pushed it where it goes. And I am obsessed with my hair.
No, I mean, it was great.
I'm so happy with it. And they took such good care of us at the salon too. Like, of me, you also happened to be there, but you were filming, so they really accommodated too for that.
Yeah, and Andy, her husband is coming, and Andy is the manager there. She's a good friend and a great supporter of us and the design. So it's like it was really fun. The salon is fantastic. And Alex was really cool.
You've been going there for a really long time, right?
I used to go there yes.
Yeah.
I used to go there a lot, and Kimberly used to go there a ton. So we know them well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so glad that I got to go there and have that experience, and that it was just really nice to feel like I was in such good, capable hands, you know? And we did film it, and we will be posting videos behind the scenes of what the experience was like. And some of the videos are shot by a woman who is just sitting next to us. She's great. What was her name again? Do you remember? Terry, I believe.
I know, we have
something like that. She was great. She was amazing because, and I made a TikTok video about this too. So, but it was really cute because I was like talking to him about what I wanted to do. And I'm like, maybe I want to like do like a little bob or something, but I think I just want to cut it all off. And she's like, have you ever heard of the movie Rosemary's Baby? And I'm like, yes, of course. Mia Farrow. She's like, yeah, Mia Farrow, that little pixie cut that she had. Anyway, what is it? Like her brother or husband or uncle, somebody was a producer of that movie. And she's like, very few people can pull off a little pixie cut, but I feel like you might be one of them. And that gave me all of the motivation that I needed to say, cut it all off.
Cut it all off.
But it feels so freeing. I for a while, like around every 4 or 5 years, I was cutting it off. And it's been 5 years since I did a shortcut. So it just feels right.
It looks stunning.
Yeah.
It really looks great.
Thank you. But I do feel like now that I have this haircut, I have to go to France.
Yes, I can see you, Café Flore, coffee.
Yes, I love it there.
You just can't do a cigarette, but
I can't?
You can't.
Really?
Just one, fine.
I know, but like if you're like when in Paris.
When in Paris.
Like I
just can't do one in Paris because it's not a cigarette.
Oh, are
it's
you
just
invited?
a pack. No, I'm not invited. I'm inviting myself. But I unfortunately wish I could do like that one cigarette, once in a blue moon at Café Flore. But I'm like, no,
it wouldn't work out, would it?
No, I would become French again.
We'll just have espresso and Perrier and
exactly.
I will have probably, maybe.
Yeah, just.
One little sip. I mean, I would look so cute.
Oh no, we'll take photos.
Should we wait? Is this are we taking the podcast to Paris?
Oh, cool. Let's do that.
Should we take the podcast to Paris?
Take the podcast to Paris.
I think that this is what I think we're doing it.
All right.
Okay.
Ooh.
I think we're both trying to call each other's bluff right now, and that's how we end up doing cool stuff. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna go to Paris. Yeah. Okay.
I know, next thing, but it's like ideas like that. They just percolate, and then suddenly, next thing you know, you're on an airplane. Be like, what happened? Oh, I like that idea.
Right? That'll be fun. You've got friends there.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Thanks for the haircut. Now I have to go to Paris. And now we're going to take the podcast to Paris. And now we're a French podcast. I have to learn a little bit more French, though, because my French is bad. You've been hearing me try.
That might take a little patience, and it'll take a little while. Huh? It's, I do enjoy the new apps, the Babbel and all that stuff. I just don't know how it works, really.
I've been listening to, like, before I go to bed, because I have to have something that I'm listening to. Usually I'll put on, like, a really boring, like, health podcast or science podcast or something like that. But lately I've been listening to basic French.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, look at that. Preparing the podcast.
I'm not retaining any of it. But I'm listening to it. I'm giving it a try. The haircut inspired all of it.
Okay.
Yeah. The haircuts inspired my entire 2025.
Wow. 2025 is going to be fun.
But speaking of traveling with the podcast, we have a few things that are coming up that are very exciting. So we're going to be in Palm Springs for Modernism Week for the Modernism Show.
Yeah.
And we have a booth there. We're going to be doing some interviews, chatting with some of our friends. We mentioned it in the last episode, so I won't go too deep into it. But I'm very excited about that. I haven't been to Modernism Week yet. Again, I'm a little stressed with the amount of work that we're going to be doing there. But it's also, again, it's so many people that we love, and it'll be a great experience too. And I get to see some pretty incredible homes and architecture.
And it's an amazing week to support. I mean, so I'm excited about that, because it's really for the good cause, and brings a lot of people into Palm Springs. It's fun. It's a fun event.
It'll be great. And then we're doing Freeze at the end of February, which is very exciting. And we're not making any announcements for March yet, but we've got so much happening in March. So I love just how much is happening with Clutter Bravado. And we're sort of approaching, like, we're coming up on 20 episodes. I think this is the 19th episode. Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
We've been doing this for a little while now. So we're approaching, like, the 6-month mark, and looking back at, like, where we've been, where we're going, how many guests we've had, all the things that we're...
Wow.
I know. It's wild.
Yeah, that's wild. Wow.
It's very cool.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Congrats.
And you know what's crazy? Is that I still like working with you.
That's really crazy.
I know.
Yeah, but I don't know why.
You don't know why?
Food, lunch.
You do feed me.
I do make helpful. Lunch.
Yeah.
That's probably it.
I'm great.
That's probably the only reason.
No, I appreciate it. And it's just such a pleasure. Yeah. And it's also a pleasure being here and, like, being able to work in such a lovely space and meeting some of the biggest and best names in the industry, and just people that I really admire, and learning so much. And nice, fun. They've been in the business for a long time, and the podcast you're going to introduce they're just so smart and nice and caring. I don't know. Yes. Yeah, our guests today are connected to and work with the biggest designers in the business, especially in Los Angeles, but not exclusively, and kind of coming at it from a different angle than what we have before. So from a PR standpoint, right, and what it looks like to market yourself as a designer and put yourself out there, but also specifically talking about what it looks like to create a personal brand. And from the matter of personal branding for myself, I just cut my hair off and now I'm French. So, so it, you know, things change and your personal brand can evolve with you and also with the work that you're doing. So, I think that they really give a pretty clear-cut idea of what that can look like. And I really appreciate just how educational this episode is specifically. I learned so much from them. And also they're just so sweet.
And it was fun to have, you know, they are partners in business and partners in life.
Yes.
They've been doing it for a long time, and it's really fun to see.
Definitely.
That not friendship, it's like that
camaraderie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. So should we just get to it?
I think so.
Okay.
Let's go.
Welcome to Clutter Bravado. We are here with Matt Walker and Josh Fernley. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm really good. How's
well.
your day started so far?
It's been an interesting day so far. It's a smoky day
in
Los Angeles.
Yes.
So that's sort of on everyone's mind. I know we have a lot of clients and friends who are being affected. So we're definitely thinking about them, thinking about everyone who's been dealing with these fires. So, but yeah, other than that, it's been a good morning.
Yeah.
And we're glad to be here.
Yeah. In the safety of the Talmadge.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
In the flats.
In the flats.
In the flats, yes.
Us.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. The heart of Koreatown is safe today.
Exactly. We should have a plan of like, where are we gonna go? What are we gonna do?
Yeah, definitely.
We may be coming back.
Exactly. I might have 3 dogs, 6 people. I can always cook for a lot of people. We're good.
Exactly.
Always.
We appreciate that.
Exactly.
We might not be able to sleep very well, but we'll be able to eat. Right.
There's so many sofas here. I think we'll be fine. Yeah, and they're all really comfortable. I've napped on a handful of them.
Yeah.
So.
I'm not worried. I know we're gonna be just fine.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's...
So I want to know about the two of you. So you run Period Media.
Yes.
PR and is it PR and marketing or just PR company?
PR and marketing.
PR and marketing for some of the biggest designers out there. So Martin Lawrence Bullard for Adam Hunter, and also for like Blackman Cruise and a few other places. So I'm curious about first how you got started.
So I started the company, and I don't want to age myself, but I'm going to, in 2004.
Great.
I was like a mere child. But I had actually, so I moved out to Los Angeles to go to architecture school. And so I went to SciArc for 2 years before deciding that maybe that was not the right direction for me. And prior to going to architecture school, I had worked at an architecture firm, and they kind of shoved me in the marketing office. And so ultimately, after I left school, I was kind of like, well, what am I going to do now? And I was like, well, I'll go back to that until I I'll go back to marketing for architecture or whatever.
Yeah.
Until I figure out what I want to actually do with my life. And we're still doing it. So obviously 20 plus years later, something's gone right.
That's really interesting that you were like interested in architecture and ended up in marketing for architecture.
Yes. Well, I think what I was always good at was sort of like architects specifically are not always good at articulating their ideas in a way that sort of a more sort of general audience can understand. Sometimes it can get super esoteric. Sometimes they just have a hard time articulating ideas. So I was very good at kind of translating. And so I think that was kind of like the genesis of the firm. And my background was really in marketing, as I said.
Okay.
And then, let's say, how many years later?
Well, so we met 16 years ago and started a relationship on the personal side. At the time, I got my career started working in entertainment. So I was doing celebrity PR once I came out of school. And working with, I worked under a woman who represented some of the top names in the industry. So at 21, I was working with Sarah Jessica Parker, Katie Holmes and Tom Cruise, Hugh Laurie. The list went on and on. So got a wealth of experience in PR and events and marketing through all of that. Met Josh a number of years later, and a year into our relationship, I was looking to make a move out of entertainment and celebrity, and we decided to start working.
Yeah, it was kind of just sort of like happenstance. It was like I had a client at the time that was like, really want to hire a PR firm. Can your partner help me figure that out? And so I was like, sure. And we set up a meeting, and at the end of it, they're like, why don't you do this for us? And so it just kind of like worked out. And originally, I don't even think our intention was to like join forces. And it was just out of that, like, he needs to figure out how to like get a company started like stat. And I was like, well, we'll just do it under my company for now. And then over time, we'll figure it out. And then ultimately, we joined forces. And it's sort of like, I can add the background in architecture and design and the relationships there. And he brought this new kind of like PR expertise into the fold that was really beneficial. Because I think at the beginning, especially because he did have all these relationships with the media, sometimes it's hard to kind of break in with like the Vanity Fairs and the Vogues and the this and the that.
Absolutely,
and the sort of like mainstream, or at the time, the sort of like the mainstream publications that people were really interested in, wanting to be covered by. And Matt had these relationships because of the celebrity component that just gave us sort of an edge in terms of being able to offer more than some of the other firms out there were able to offer.
Yeah.
The thing I was just going to say, the thing I was thinking too, going off what Josh was saying, was I think it was interesting because it did bring in a completely different perspective. And there's a lot of great PR firms out there that focus and specialize in design. I think having these varied backgrounds, having worked with celebrity, worked in fashion, worked in all these different areas, we're able, and I know, part of what we want to talk about today is just kind of like personal branding.
Yeah.
We're able to look at these various clients from many different perspectives.
Yeah.
So when we think about strategy around how we're going to pitch someone, the storytelling around it, obviously design and architecture and landscape and whatever their specialty is part of it. But we really like to think bigger and think about, how can we take that person and what they do and also make it apply to all these other areas, because the reality is the fashion publications, the lifestyle publications, the food publications, they're all covering design and architecture in their own way. And so that's something that we have a lot of fun with our team, and I think, really shows with the longevity we have with a lot of these clients. I think it has a huge part as to why. Because they love that we are able to think so far outside the box.
When did we work together?
Oh gosh,
long time ago. It was over 10 years ago.
Oh, well, way more, yeah.
Probably more like 13, 14.
Well, let's see. I think we worked on the antique show 2012. I think, because we did Legends of La Cienega, which is kind of ultimately, I think, how we were introduced into the loop.
Oh, wow.
That's what it is.
So we did Legends of La Cienega in 2011. And then I think it was through Robert and Patrick and all the people that are part of the LCDQ that we were kind of introduced to the antique show, and then to Rosemary, who runs the antique show, and all these other great programs. But yeah, that was a fun time.
When you worked together, what was the nature of that? Like, how were you working together?
So Laurent, what was your role? You had like the head of
the antique show, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was Robert and I were the head of the antique show, and so Matt and Josh were the communication and PR.
That's
and
great.
We had some really fun meeting. It was it was creative.
It was fun. It was a good time.
Yes.
We did that little trip to San Francisco together.
That's great.
Didn't we do like your daughter's birthday dinner at like the Taylor?
Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah. And now she's 25.
I know. yeah, exactly.
I think that was like her 12th birthday.
I think she was a little older, but
it must have been that. It was around that.
It was around that time. It was around that time. And that, going through all of that, then eventually signing on to do Legends of La Cienega, that is how we got into the realm of knowing Catherine Ireland and knowing Martin Lawrence Bullard, and then things just kind of took off from there. And I feel like it kind of took on a life of its own.
Because at the beginning, I think we were a little bit broader. We worked with fashion brands. We worked sort of a little bit more generally. We still did some entertainment stuff because people would approach Matt specifically about that. So at the beginning, we were a bit more broad in terms of the clientele that we worked with. And I think doing Legends for LCDQ, obviously, you know, kind of put us at this epicenter of this important event. So we did gain, you know, some nice recognition from that, and some clients who were very high profile at the time. There was a show coming out called $1 Million Decorators. And we worked with, at the time, we worked with Catherine Ireland. We had then also, for season 2, worked with Martin Lawrence Ballard, who we still work with both of them today. And that was really kind of what thrust us, I think, into that kind of like the sort of like intensity of the sort of like design space in LA. And now we're fortunate, you know, we have clients all over the world ultimately. I would say we still have a good amount locally or regionally, but you know, we work with clients in Australia and London, you know, New York, all over the place. And that's kind of fun too, because I think it's nice to get a broader perspective. You know, sometimes LA specifically is a certain way, you know, but you go to New York and things are a little bit different. So starting to understand how those, you know, how that really affects our clients. And also, you know, going back to the idea of personal branding, I think it also helps shape the narrative of your story. Because I think, you know, the personal branding component, I think, ultimately is like telling your story. Because everyone's story is a little bit different, right? Like everyone kind of comes from a different background. I'll use another example, a client like Adam Hunter, who was like a Broadway star. You know, and I have to say that thread is probably in every single feature that we get, or home feature or whatever it is for Adam, speaks about the fact that he was a Broadway performer, and that informs his sort of theatrical approach to design. And that sort of starts telling a bit more of a story about who Adam is, and you understand it. And I think the idea is you want to kind of find the space within the market that is exclusively yours, right? Like everyone comes with these different backgrounds and these different, you know, how they fell into design. I mean, every one of our clients has a different story, has a different kind of motivation for wanting to be in this industry and what they perceive as success. And so we really work with them very closely to kind of identify what that is early on in our process, so that when we are doing specifically, you know, communications on their behalf, you know, we're telling the story consistently, you know, in a way that's compelling. That adds to, you know, the sort of importance, I think, of the work that they do.
So how does that, Matt, mostly for you too, how does that differ from when you're working with like more like celebrities and actors and people who are in entertainment, when you have the story behind them? And especially like behind designers, with every project that they're doing or with every new thing that they're doing, there's something different that you're angling towards. So how is it different working with designers versus working with celebrities and actors?
Good question. There are actually probably more similarities
Really?
than you would think. Sometimes I think some of the designers are tougher than the celebrities. We can talk about that off camera. I'm kidding. But I think that to be honest with you, the celebrity portion of things was fun. When you're on tour with Sarah Jessica Parker for Sex and the City, there's nothing better. I mean, I had some of the most fun times in my life doing those kind of tours with people like her. Working with designers who do have all these varied backgrounds, I think it's more fun, it's more engaging, there's more diversity. There's more diversity, there's more thought that we can take into things. Like, I think about, like, you know, Lisa Adams, who owns LA Closet Design, who is a client of ours. Her background was as a chemist. And so, like, thinking about, like, how she went from that to now being one of the top closet designers in the world. But also...
Sorry, I told you we'll talk over each other.
Perfect, I love it.
It's just sort of more me than him. But no, I also think that's interesting because it does inform kind of her approach. Because, you know, I'm not saying this in any kind of negative way, but she's kind of a geek about this stuff. Like, she loves, like, the AI, like, the automated systems, like, you know, the changing colors of lights and all of these things. And she's really forward-thinking. And that, I think, is beneficial. And I'm sure there's also a component of, like, you know, organization and methodology. Like, she's very sort of methodical about her process.
And we know, I think we've learned, and we know our clients so intimately at this point. And so, as Josh was saying earlier, like each of them is so different and they have their own personality, they have their own goals. And so the way we approach pitching out something for like Martin Lawrence Ballard is completely different from a William Hefner.
Yes.
Which he has a different approach. It's a lot more serious.
Yes.
He's a brilliant mind. Like and these people we've worked with for years and years. And so it's just really interesting to be able to go through that process and work with them collaboratively, because I do think with all of our clients, that's something that is really important to us and them, is we need to make sure, like, we will come to them with, this is the story we think should be told around you, around this new project, around this new product collaboration you're putting out. But we always want their sign off to make sure that it feels, unique and special and authentic to them.
From a personal point. So this is, I think that a lot of people these days sort of have this issue because we are doing so many things.
Yeah.
And I personally, like, I'm self-proclaimed multi-hyphenate. I've done a million different things. I've had a lot of different careers. I'm an artist in a lot of different ways. And when I'm then pivoting into this space, one of the things that I get a little hung up on, especially with like social media, is how exactly to market such a broad amount of story that I have. So many things that I've done. Am I like former like musician, singer, songwriter, like / designer, like or like actor, or the modeling that I've done, and all of these things that I've done in the past, that now I'm like, how do I, like, what of these things do I get to put forward, and how many of these things do I kind of like keep in my back pocket?
Right.
And how are you, the two of you, how are you working with these designers to pick out that story? What is something that seems like it would work better?
Well, I think ultimately what Matt was saying in terms of like working collaboratively, I think that's important, because also often when we're thinking about this stuff, especially about ourselves, it's very hard to prioritize things. It's very hard to understand how people perceive it from externally, because we're so entrenched in it. Like, we often think about this with designers when they're talking about their projects or certain images, when we're shooting them and that kind of stuff, and they have all this, like, and they get hung up on certain things that, from an external point of view, I'm like, why do we care about this? Or, this is a great shot. What do you mean you don't like it? But I know that because it was like, this is a horrible process, or, this is really difficult, or that wasn't our choice. But we can come back and be like, hey, but that's a great image. You know? And so I think about it from kind of that perspective. You want to prioritize, I would say, like, what your vision is, I would say. Like, you want some clarity there. And then use sort of your background as sort of a foundation for that, and there's going to be certain pieces that don't support that. Yeah. Right? So they may be, you don't necessarily focus on those things. You don't have to hide them, but, and I think sometimes having little anecdotal things come up, over time when people are getting to know you better personally, or getting to know your brand better, then I think it's interesting to be like, oh yeah, I was an actor, I was a musician, I was this, that, and the other. I think then you can kind of like figure out what the sort of, I almost think of it as a book. You figure out what your chapter headings are, and you kind of figure out what supports the story that you're looking to tell and what helps you tell that story. Yeah.
And I think that what we have really become great at is we always, starting with a new client, we always want them to do a bit of a brain dump on us, where they just give us everything. We want all the history, we want all the, and then we look at that with our team and we're like, okay, how do we take different parts of this and tell a story that, helps to people to understand how they are where they are today, and how those different elements played into that. And that doesn't mean using all of it. There's plenty of the items in there that we're like, we do not need to talk about the fact that you worked at Applebee's when you were in high school. Not helpful today. But there's other things that came up along the way, or you did along the way, or you participated in along the way, that like, we can piece this together, and it does tell a more interesting story. So go ahead.
No, so you've had clients for, some of them 12, 15 years, 16 years. How do you see their evolution? So do you Do you focus mostly on what they're doing now? Do you revert back? How do you manage that?
I mean,
Fascinating.
for what we do, like newness is a key word. So anytime we're pitching out a client, it's always like, what's new? Like that people, if it happened 6 months ago, a year ago, it's like old news. So newness is always kind of, I think, an important kind of factor in terms of telling the story. But I think having a background then provides context. And oftentimes we really encourage our designer clients specifically, we like to get them sort of face to face with editors and writers, because then they get to kind of like give additional layers. Because if we're just looking at projects and imagery, it really just tells that sort of superficial story, but once you start dialogue, I think it becomes much more meaningful to kind of both parties. And I think that's something that we kind of work with our clients to achieve. And part of that is, getting them in front of people so they can have those interactions.
And I think too that we love to see the evolution, and we love to kind of expand on that as you go on. The Catherine Ireland we represented, or signed with, it'll be 14 years ago this year, is a very different Catherine Ireland than the person that we push out and pitch out today. The same basic ethos is there, and the same great design style, and the same personality. But it's like, I think what we always get excited about, and what they get excited about, is like, where do we go next with this? What else? What more can we be doing to tell the story in different ways? Same thing with Martin. The Martin who with him now, it's been 12 years. And it's exciting for us to be able to think about and explore different ways to have him presented to the world, and he gets really excited about it. Last night, I don't know if anyone watched, I made him watch.
You did? I didn't watch it.
Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Martin is a recurring character on the new season.
I've heard about that.
I'm very excited about that.
Yeah.
But that was something that we did, and again, it's like a whole new, we can cover the basics in terms of, what one is meant to do in terms of pitching out a client or projects for PR.
Yeah.
I get excited about stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, how can we, and that arguably, I was saying to Martin this morning, and it's like, we were saying, it's like, that might be the best press placement you ever got me, because that's international, and that's introducing him to a whole new audience that, was hard to get to otherwise. And, with someone like him, we're always having to think about, our approach with him is always twofold, because we need to be securing placements that are targeting the Martin Lawrence Bullard client in terms of homeowner, but separately, Martin has books, he has a wide range of product line, and these other, this other part of the market, it allows, there are other things that we can push that make Martin accessible, whether or not you're able to hire him to design your home or not. And so we always have to be thinking about both sides. Which is fun.
That does sound really fun. And also just to be able to, seeing him on the Real Housewives, I want to watch it now. Well, I try to stay away from reality TV, but I also did watch the one season that's on Netflix of $1 Million Decorator.
Season 2 is now also.
Is it also on there?
Yes,
okay, great.
No, sadly, and I don't want to say sadly because it's actually quite charming. It's we watched it recently because we would have been around during that time, and honestly, we forgot any of the plots. We were that happened, but also, everyone looks different, and we, you're like, oh wow, we were young back then. But it is interesting. I think ultimately using that, because I think that specifically these sort of entertainment vehicles or larger platforms or sort of recognition in any kind of way, it does. It's sort of it builds the foundation. In our client, Martin and Catherine's bios, we will forever mention their sort of television involvement. Doesn't matter if it's 20 years old, because it still kind of helps tell the story of who they are. Ultimately. And
that kind of brings me to my next question too, because that landscape has changed so much in the last 10 years. Now, so much is happening with social media, and a lot of people are sort of expected to do a lot of this work on their own and trying to figure out how to brand themselves and how to put themselves out there. And luckily, a lot of those tools are available, but the expertise isn't. And so I was wondering if there's anything that you can share with people who are sort of like building up their own personal brand on social media, some things that will give them a better idea of how to market themselves.
Yeah.
Specifically
absolutely.
designers, but not exclusively, if you want to share beyond that.
Yeah, I think in general, like I'll start and you can chime in. I think because we help a lot of clients with social media, whether it's our firm taking it on our own or just giving advice. We'll often do audits on social media for clients and give it to them so they have something to work from moving forward. I always think that, you want to, across the board, the visuals and the voice on social media need to directly relate to what is shown on the website, which needs to directly relate to any other PR or marketing activity that you're involved in.
Yeah.
So I think we really pride ourselves on our clients. If you look at a press piece on them, then go to their website, then go to social media, the story is consistent across the board.
Or they're like pieces of the same puzzle, I would say. Because I don't think that they're exactly, it's not going to be redundant. You want to use each sort of like channel in a different way. But I do think that, I don't know, I go back to the sort of storytelling component. Like you want to be telling that same story. Maybe you're doing it a little bit differently. On social media specifically. I mean, I think kind of also like showing different facets of who you are. And this is whether you're a brand or an individual. I think, it's almost like person, place, things, ideas, or whatever. I think there's one more. I think having some diversity in terms of what you're showing, but making sure that there's a thread in there that explains why these different images and ideas and concepts, why they make sense amongst one another.
Yeah.
And I think, because I think so many people get caught up in social of like, the selfies, or it's like for designers, it's just like, work or, project things. And I think there's process, there's ideas, there's inspiration, there's, people that are involved. And I think kind of illustrating sort of the larger story, I think can be a really good, a really good sort of way to approach social.
Yeah.
I think we've been talking a lot about this with clients recently, whether they're doing too much on social, not enough on social. I think it has become, so even though when it all started, I was probably trying to avoid it as much as possible, it now is a necessary evil. I think it's something that we really have to embrace. And like what I say to clients all the time, whether we're doing their social media or not, it's one of your best and biggest platforms. It's almost like your own press piece.
It's like your own
constantly
news channel.
able to push out. We talked to a textile brand that we've worked on and off with over the years recently, and they were saying, I really, maybe we post once every 1 to 2 weeks. It's really if someone else posts and tags us, we'll just reshare it. And I'm thinking to myself, you have thousands of designers and architects following you, and you're not using this as an opportunity to constantly, and by constant, I think
consistently
be pushing out what you have to offer. And I know even for ourselves, often going through social media, I do it more than I would like to, but it does kind of remind you're like, oh right, that brand or that restaurant or that thing. And if you're not out there pushing it, you kind of get lost. I think you can easily.
And it's also, lost. It's also like low-hanging fruit, right? It's like you have control over it.
Yeah.
You get to make these decisions versus, some more challenging ways to sort of like get sort of, to express yourself. And I think that's something, interesting about social is like specifically, that you do have this autonomy and, we've seen it done a million different ways, and I think that it is intended to be like each client is different. Like we have certain clients that are very, serious and like, so I'm like, your page should reflect that, in terms of how you approach things, because ultimately you want it to be authentic because you want to attract the kind of people who are looking for a designer that's serious versus we have other clients who are very like personality based, and I think it gives you an opportunity to kind of like, tell your story from your point of view.
True.
And I think if you do it, consistently, if you do it in a way that, shows kind of like, as I said, like diversity, like you're not just showing the same thing over and over again, again, it just kind of keeps people engaged.
Yeah. Yeah.
The last thing I'll say on it, unless you have any other questions,
I will, but
is I do think it's really important to be thoughtful in what you're putting out. And again, that's from the visual side. That's also from the written side. Because I do think if you look at, like we oversee William Hefner's social in addition to the other elements that we work on for him. You look at his page and it is so beautiful. The captions that are included are so much in his voice, but really like I just love going through his page. It feels very consistent. It feels like there's a narrative and a story to tell. We have editor feedback often. It's like went to his Instagram page and we're completely sold on what he does. And I think that's an important for anyone, no matter whether you're doing it yourself, just starting out, is figuring out what that narrative is for you. Because one thing, and again, we say it to clients all the time, we'll have people come to us interested in PR, and if their website and social is not on point, we say, take a few months, get things in order, and then it will be time to have a conversation. Because the one thing we know, time and time again, when we pitch clients out, the first thing editors do, and anyone else we're going to, they're going to their website and they're going to their Instagram and they're looking through that, and if it is a mess or it doesn't tell a consistent story, or it's a couple of great design shots but then a dog and a kid playing in the park, it's discombobulated, and I think it can throw a lot of people who are considering them for different things.
Yeah. Like, and you've mentioned too that like you want to have some personality on there, so it's not just pictures of your work, but like also something that's gonna sort of humanize and be a little bit.
Well,
more
I was gonna disagree with Matt with just this one component, because I do
about
think
the dog?
that there are and like people like the kids and dogs, like people like kind of seeing, I think, a little bit behind the scenes. I would say you want to do it,
but when
in an
kids and
aesthetic
dog,
way,
like aesthetically pleasing photo.
Exactly. I do think when you're in an aesthetic business, that you just kind of have to always make sure whatever you're showing, it's a beautiful version of whatever that is.
I want the dog in a beautifully designed space. I don't want the dog coming out of surgery and big eyes.
Sure, yeah.
I was going to say,
Conan.
we have clients who every photo is with their dogs. That's what I was going to say. There is a dog in like every client photo. There's a dog. We have a lot of clients who love their dogs, but also use them as props. So I think that I only disagree with that, because I do think that there is something about like humanizing it, giving people a little bit of a touch point of like, this is who I am, this is my personality. But again, doing it in a way that kind of tells the story, doesn't interrupt it. I think that's what kind of Matt was probably speaking to. Is that ultimately you don't want that to be like, oh, I thought they were an architect and all of a sudden they're showing, everyone does it their own way, and sometimes I think that's fine. But there's tons of people who are like, here's me, here I am at the gym, and at the same time here I am working. Yeah. Sometimes I don't necessarily agree with all of those decisions, but hey, everyone gets to, again, it's their own channel. They get to do what they want.
So your industry has, when I started in this business, it was not, we didn't chisel marble. We were already taking photos.
Okay.
But, we were pretty much on film. On film. Yeah. We had to hire a photographer, and we were, advertising in the antique magazine and, with beautiful photos. But that was kind of the only, and I've been like that for 50 years. That was the one thing that you did. It was not that complicated. It's like you opened up a store, you put a chair and a lamp and a table, you took a photo and you sent it to, with your logo, and you sent it to magazines and you paid. So that was kind of the one thing to do for, magazines. So now it's like, there's everything. There's the TV, there's the YouTube, there's the social media, there's the magazines that are
podcasts,
still...
There's
podcasts.
Yeah.
How do you, work all that stuff, and then what's coming up for you? What do you think is the next step?
What's next? Well, to answer your first question, I think that we, again, this is part of like our onboarding process we do with each client, because not every client wants to or makes sense for television, podcasts, you know, events, speaking panels, whatever it may be. So we really look to identify with each of them, like, what is your comfort level? What are the goals? Where do you want to be seen and placed? Are podcasts of interest? Is TV of interest? You know, so on and so forth. It's
also a little bit of like who your audience is,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And kind of figuring out, you know, where are those eyeballs going to be?
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of funny because like we come from a background, obviously, as Laurent was saying, you know, where at the beginning of working together, it was all about print magazine features. That's all anybody cared about. And that's all there kind of really was at the time. And over time, we've seen the evolution where it's not only are the magazines sort of like less intrinsic to the process, but they've also had to adapt themselves. So a lot of time now they're like a platform, right? Instead of just a magazine, but the print magazines are still there, and you know, we still see value in that. And part of that is because a specific audience still picks up and reads magazines, you know, and oftentimes for our clients who are looking for, you know, sort of an affluent clientele that could potentially skew a little older, you know, I think then print magazines still kind of make a lot of sense.
Makes sense, yeah.
And I think that we just also try to be strategic in terms of like covering all of those bases, because you're like, okay, you're gonna have a certain audience that's going to still gravitate towards print, a certain audience that's just gonna be on social. And then you have the people who are gonna click on the links and go, you know, explore, you know, things digitally. And I think we really try to kind of work to determine what are the priorities, what's the hierarchy amongst that, and then also like, you know, there's different places for different types of content. And I think so we kind of strategize about what makes sense for each client. And then honestly, it's collaborative. There are certain clients who do not care about print whatsoever because they see it as antiquated, and you know, all I want is digital because someone can click on the link and go to my website and contact me directly.
Yeah.
Especially for clients manufacturing like brands with product. You know, they love the sort of digital component of
Go
PR.
directly to their
People
store.
still love the romance, honestly, of like print, and everyone likes to have that.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I would too. You know,
and we
love
do
that,
too.
yeah.
We agree with it. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, like
I understand where they're coming from on that.
We just put the newest issue of Lux has a project Adam Hunter's on the cover.
Yeah.
And like, you know, I think that's really exciting. You know, I think that we're proud of that, but I know Adam's particularly proud of that. You know, and I think being able to kind of have that sort of artifact, right?
Yeah.
It still feels good. And obviously, you know, Lux is going to cover it in digital and social, and they're going to have all those platforms involved. But I think there's still something kind of romantic about, you know, the print pieces.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the reality is, it all can be done. I mean, I think it's fascinating at times to think back to when we started working together 15 years ago. You know, PR was us taking on a client, taking their projects or their product and pitching to print, and sometimes online. But online was still, they weren't doing as much of the original content as they do now.
And clients were always very disappointed. Like if it went online, it was like, it was like, oh, never mind, don't care.
And now we live in a different world where we are working on these clients, and like as an example, Una Milan, who you guys might know, you know, working with her, we're pitching out stories on her, we're pitching out the line she represents, we're pitching out her showrooms, the home she has in the hills, pitching her speaking engagements, her own collection. So we're having to think about so many different ways to engage various audiences. PR has changed a lot, you know, and I think one thing that we always talk about and work through with clients, potential clients, everyone has a slightly different perspective of what PR is. And so it's funny at times, and again, we offer a pretty wide breadth of services, but, you know, we'll sit in meetings with potential clients and they'll go, well, PR means that you're also going to be doing my social, right? And you're also going to be doing this, and you're also going to be doing that. Right. And again, it's not that we can't do that, but it's just been interesting to see the evolution of PR and how much it has changed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of almost like an intentionally ambiguous term, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't actually make a ton of sense other than you're figuring out how to communicate from like an external point of view. And I think that over time, those like modes of communication have definitely changed. And so I think that we've kind of had to evolve with that. Originally, I think we were probably a little bit, I don't want to say late to the show. I think maybe in terms of really embracing kind of like, okay, the world is moving forward and we need to get on board with this. But now that we have, and we've taken the time to kind of really develop, our services and really kind of explain in a concise and, valuable way in terms of like what we actually can do for different clients. And I think it's nice to be able to kind of go and offer sort of a wider range, because honestly, a big thing is not only, a lot of times people come to us and they're like, we don't really know what you do, but we're told we need it. It's that kind of thing. Because again, they're not really sure what public relations is and what it covers, and because it is a broad term, so I think that...
We get that a lot. Like the amount of people we get on calls with, and they're like, not a clue what you do, but so-and-so said we need to hire you. And I'm like, okay, I can have the contract over by this afternoon.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. Our clients are like, we don't really know what questions to ask you. So you kind of have to be like, well, you could ask us this question because, you kind of like lead them along. So there's definitely an education part of this as well. I think that because, again, it is kind of intentionally ambiguous.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes, people want to just ultimately gain exposure. And so I think that's kind of the sort of thread. But there's lots of ways to do that. And so I think we kind of really built our business about kind of working with clients to understand, again, the priorities, who they're looking to engage, and then what the right way of going about that is. And ultimately, what is the message you're sending?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it feels like you're just creating a public profile for the people that are your clients.
Yeah.
In a way that, like, when when I hear Martin Lawrence Bullard's name, I associate him with certain things.
Right.
And that's the magic behind what you've been doing.
I'm a chocolate addict.
Right. That's part of it.
Yes.
That's part of it.
That's why Chloe,
is.
my daughter, who is madly in love with Martin,
Yes.
still remembers that, and it's so funny because you should start a line of chocolate. You would make a lot
He
of money.
probably will. Yeah, that's a great idea.
But that, and thank you for saying that. Like, I do think that that is something that is so important to us, and I really believe when you think of Martin, when you think of Catherine Ireland, when you think of Jackie Searman, William Hefner, Adam Hunter, you immediately have an idea of
touch points,
who they are, what they do, what their design aesthetic is, what the personality is, and that goes back to this personal branding.
Yeah.
And, looking at each person individually and figuring out how to position them in a way that, you do have that. It was interesting. We were at the RH opening in Montecito recently, and I thought it was very sweet. Like, Suma, who runs their trade program, she was introducing us to a number of designers, and she's a big supporter, and she always gets very excited.
She's our hype woman.
She's our hype woman. She's our PR person. But she was introducing us to all these people, and she's like, they are the guys who represent the names who you only need a first name and you know exactly who. And she literally, and I was like, that's an interesting thing to say. And she then she goes, Martin, Catherine, William. And I was like, you know what? That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting. Like, it's, they've become these kind of household names.
Yeah.
Not that they weren't doing amazingly well before they signed with us, but I think, we working with them, as Josh was saying, very collaboratively, have really figured out how to take it to a next level. And
what's beautiful about that is, like, they are doing incredible work. But the work isn't the only thing. Like, their personality is such a part of why people want to work with them, why people want to hire them.
Absolutely.
And that's something that's great about working with PR, is that you have, like, the public has an idea of what they're getting right away. So, I mean, you're doing amazing work. So.
Thank you.
Yes.
And in terms of what, Laurent, to answer your other question, in terms of what's next? I think that obviously we're doing this interview with you first week of 2025. I think we had talked a lot during 2024 was a weird year. Company did well, but there was a lot going on. There was the election. There was a lot of variables that I think kind of just played into, for us, making it feel like a bit of a weird year.
Yeah,
so
2025 is starting just fine.
It's starting
It
great.
is.
Yeah.
We're just starting really well.
But I think we have been talking a lot recently about investing more in ourselves, investing more in the company. We have been really blessed to pretty much build a business based on reputation and word of mouth. We've not done a lot to put ourselves out there.
It's like the cobbler's
Yeah.
children having shoes.
Yeah.
For sure.
So we're wanting to invest in more things like that. We joined Design Leadership Network. Has been really beneficial to us. We want to look into doing more things like that. I also think we want to, because we offer, I think for a long time, we became very well known as the go-to PR guys in terms of media relations. And I think that's another area that we want to build upon, and the fact that we do have all these other expertises, whether it be rebranding, website creative and development, social media. We have clients now signing us to put together book proposals for them and put that out there into the world, because we've worked with,
we've done
luckily
a ton of books.
We've had so many clients who have done so many books, and so we have a direct line into every major book publisher, and so now we're able to help clients with that. And I think that's been kind of fun. We're already starting to see that build, but that's been fun to also be able to have a hand in all these different aspects of the client's company.
Because it's nice now, because I think when we meet with a potential client or a new client, they can kind of just download and say like, hey, here's what I'm interested in. And often, I think there's a bucket list that's pretty consistent amongst designers. Obviously like media coverage, but also books, collaborations. And there's a lot of sort of like goals that I would say are kind of relatively consistent amongst everyone.
I think one of the things the clients feel so comfortable with is that whether or not it's something they're even necessarily paying us to deal with directly or not, because we have such a wealth of information and education with all these people, we have clients all the time who are coming to us and they're like, I want to be doing a product collaboration. Where do I begin? Like, where do I even start? Should I be doing it myself and producing it myself, or should I look into partnering with a brand, partnering with a showroom, and I think they really rely on us as a resource to, not that we necessarily would take that on fully for them. I mean, for some we do, it's a kind of case by case, but we can help guide and direct. Because a lot of these things are very overwhelming, starting with social. Like, I can't tell you how many people we sit with who are amazing at design and all these things, and they have a beautiful website, and they're like, I become paralyzed when it comes to trying to figure out how to operate and manage social media.
The one more thing.
I
think that everyone's like, oh shoot, it's 8 p.m. and I just put the kids to bed. And I finally have a moment with myself, and now I have to go, work on my Instagram. People can download these like goals to us, and then we can provide sort of like advice and direction in terms of how they can achieve that, whether it's working with us directly because we can offer services, or it's just like, sometimes we have clients who are like, hey, I know my social needs help. I actually really enjoy doing it, but I'd really love, some feedback. And so that's what Matt was saying in terms of doing audits for clients. We often do that and just say, here's some ways that you can engage, here's some ways that you can think about your content differently. But I think being able to offer sort of a breadth of services gives us sort of like some nice insight that's helpful for clients who don't necessarily want to hire 4 different companies to help them in all these different areas. It allows us to kind of provide, we work on building trust in our relationships with our clients. And so over time, it's kind of like they come to us because they're like, hey, I really don't want to hire someone else. So I'd really love to do this with you if you're open to it. And that's how a lot of sort of, I think, these offerings really came to fruition. It's because people have kind of requested them.
And I think that what's beautiful is that, I mean, we've known, obviously, you've been in my life for a long time, but your the personal relationship that you built with your client, that's a huge, because I see you they have a beautiful home, and you have people over, and it's like it becomes this family, and I think that means a lot to
Absolutely.
I think that's
even,
very unique.
Even using today or the past day or two as an example, we have a number of clients who are really being impacted directly by these fires. And we have, we've talked to all of them. We reach out, like we care, we connect. And honestly, even for us, like we've had a number of people on the East Coast or people elsewhere who reach out to us, like media people, who really like text us, call us, email us to make sure we're doing okay. I think there is something nice about being able to build a business where like the personal relationships matter. Yeah. And I think that that's been something that we've really enjoyed. Again, we have clients that we've worked with for decades at this point, and we go to their houses on Christmas Eve. We're very like integrated into their, go on vacation together.
Yeah.
Most of my client calls, which I don't know if this is slightly strange or not, end with the client being like, "Love you," which I think is somewhat probably rare. Like,
I love that.
I love that. That's fantastic. But I
true.
think it's such a huge part of your sector.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, like this woman who I love dearly, Karen Rideau, we were talking about from Kitchen Design Group. Every time we're together, she's like, "I just love you so much."
Oh, that's amazing.
And it's really sweet. But I think that, I think that goes to exactly what you were saying, that like and it truly is not even purposeful, because there are a couple of people out there that we worked with who would probably not say they loved us, but
only a couple.
With most of them, we do develop these relationships, and it all starts, of course, from a working relationship, but I think they feel so well taken care of and so protected that you really do, not only do they feel comfortable then expanding what we do for them and they want us involved in every part of the business, but it also extends beyond that. And we say to clients all the time, like, we're even in new business meetings, we never know how that relationship is going to pan out.
Yeah.
But we're not, I think a lot of designers, architects, landscape designers look at PR marketing as kind of like a extension of, like, it's almost like is a consultant type role. We really see ourselves as part of the team.
Right.
Yeah.
We are fully integrated, as much as a client would like us to be into whatever they have going on. And I think it goes a long way.
Well, and I think that kind of going back to sort of our original topic of like personal branding, it's like in order for us to do our job, we kind of have to get to know our clients.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like we kind of have to have that moment of like, all right, let's get it out there in terms of like, who are you? What do you really want? Like, how do we tell this story? You kind of have to get into like the nitty gritty in order to do your job effectively. And I do think that then does foster kind of closeness, and then we develop, the relationships do kind of like become this sort of like personal, professional, and I think it's nice that we're able to achieve both, because that can sometimes be a little bit dicey, I suppose.
Yeah.
But also I have to give credit to Matt, because I think that going back to his background in celebrity PR is one thing that you are absolutely sort of required to do as a celebrity publicist, is to like sort of handle your client. To make sure they're always comfortable, to make sure
part of it.
they are heard. And I think he does play that role very effectively for our clients in terms of he gets his phone rings constantly and no one ever calls me. Because I'm good at telling you how
I would have never guessed.
Really?
I'm good at telling you how it is, but Matt is much better in terms of like making sure that our clients are comfortable.
Yeah.
And they do really, and I think
you've got sort of like a good cop, bad cop thing going on.
a little
Which
bit.
is part of the reason
Well,
this
tender
all
cop.
works.
Tender cop.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Got it.
No, but I do think it's interesting. And again, sometimes I wonder if this was like the best way to approach all of this. But because of that background, it's all I knew was this over, kind of like mama bear. So, because again, when you're working with these celebrities and doing, you really, it's a huge part of the job is to make sure they are so protected. Working with these celebrities, I think, it became so ingrained in me to kind of have this overprotective kind of mama bear, mentality and approach to them, where they are always just feel so taken care of and so protected. And if we say a car is going to be there at a time, that car's there at that time because our office is calling that morning to make sure that that car is there on time and that every single thing is going to fall into place so smoothly. It's interesting when you're out and about because, you know, we're around events where there are other publicists kind of with their clients. And I think, and this is something that I think has just become like, it's very known in PR that like, if you're not scrambling and running around like a chicken with your head cut off, you're not doing your job effectively. And we have such a different approach to it where I'm like, everything is so, you know, sealed and dealt with in advance that walking into an event with any client, there's no need for chaos or upset or, you know, and
even if that client really wants the chaos.
Sometimes, I was just gonna say, like like I can put this akin to like people who travel. Like when you travel, there are some people that love getting to the gate like right as things are closing. Like they get to the airport as soon as boarding begins, and people love that. I'm the kind of person that arrives to an airport 2 hours early.
Same.
I've packed every phone charger that I can. I'm not missing anything in all of my bags. Like I have something in case one of my bags goes missing. Like I'm over careful about that. And I think that especially in this business overall, but especially in your side of it, like those things need to be taken care of ahead of time so that stress doesn't come up. But I'm sure that there's got to be some people that are a little bit like, oh no, like something has to fall apart.
Sure.
One of my favorite, and we did, it took some coaching and it took some education, but when we started with Catherine Ireland, who again, she's one of our closest, she's a close friend, she's a close client, she's family. But we used to show up, we would have, you know, huge national photo shoots at her homes. And I would talk to her the day prior, everything good, honey, everything's great, everything's fine, see you in the morning. We would roll in. Dishes all over the sink, pizza boxes out, empty wine bottles. None of the beds were made, and we would have a photographer rolling up in a half hour.
She had kids at the time.
Yeah.
That was a big part of it.
That was a big part of it. So, you know, but over time, we really worked through it together, and now when we show up for a shoot at her house, it is dialed in, good to go.
It took only 14 years, but
so it took 14 years.
But there is also something.
Years, but here we are.
But yeah, there's something that we're probably very good at, even if it's not a great thing, which is that like whatever culture is going on within a client's organization, we kind of sort of behave in a complementary way. We definitely bring like sort of a methodical sort of approach to it, which I think allows us to get our job done ultimately. But clients are comfortable working how they're comfortable working. And sometimes they need deadlines, they need pressure. Like we have the clients that'll, you know, send the answers to the questions like 20 minutes after you send them to them. We have the clients that you have to remind 25 times and it's 3 days late and all of that kind of stuff. You know, you're always going to have different personalities involved, but we figured that out. And if we know we have the client who's always going to send it 3 days late, we just lie about the deadline and move it up 3 days. You know, it's like we find a way to kind of complement their approach that still allows us to get the job done.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. So I wanna move on to we have 3 questions that we ask for all of our guests. I did send them to you ahead of time.
I know you did.
So you are prepared. I had a feeling that you needed to have that.
You're the only ones who have had the questions.
Everybody else, I just sort of surprised them, right?
Really?
But I kind of figured that, you know,
we might need a little help.
I figured you like to be prepared.
Yes,
So first question.
We're so not prepared. You should send them to us, but we still don't know.
What is the messiest place in your home?
I would say we really try to keep things quite tidy. Laurent, you've been to the house, and I'm very OCD about that.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily a room, but it's like there are cabinets that make me a little crazy.
Got it.
And
it's
we have
like the candle cabinet. He's like cleaning out. I was like, we actually have a closet that we could clean out.
I love that you have a candle cabinet. The candle cabinet is just trash.
No, he's like, this is stressing me out.
Which stresses me out.
I think the real truth is the messiest part is your shoes being left throughout the house.
Ooh. Okay.
We've never had a couple on.
Question number 2.
No, I love this. We always have like one half of a couple on that's like gonna say,
right,
you know.
Right.
But normal, like I like that this.
Well, obviously you did have time to prepare.
It's
that's all like a bit of a loaded answer.
It just came to me.
We also
He'll come off from the gym and he takes his shoes, which is fine. He takes his shoes off at the door, but then they sit there. And then there's another pair of shoes that goes next to them, and then they're sort of like moved around the house. And the house in general is very tidy. But we're both probably we have a little bit of both of us in there.
We're moving on to question number 2. I was just No, I love it. Thank you for your honesty. I love that. That's fantastic.
I always count on him.
We have a candle cabinet, and we have shoes. It's fine. Listen.
Could be worse.
Look, it could be worse, huh?
Yes, absolutely. It could be worse. Okay, second question. What is your favorite space that you've been to, either in your house or in maybe like one of your clients had worked in a home, like a space that you've been in that is notable to you? And you can each answer separately if you choose to.
Okay, I did think about this one a little bit, and I feel like this is like a very like cliche boo-hoo answer, but I was like, part of me was like, any space that the dog is with us, I feel very well. We had, not to get, sentimental. We had 3. We're down to 1.
Okay.
And so she now is kind of with us
as
much as we can have her with us. So there's that. But I would say, thinking about like client spaces, like Martin has a bar at his home in LA that I just think is one of the coolest spaces one could be in.
Yeah.
Catherine Ireland spaces are always and we've been with her through multiple
I was gonna
homes.
say multiple homes, and they're all you very much feel at home in them. But this past summer, we went to her house in France, and it just was the most sort of like authentic. It's sort of like it just shined with what she does best.
Wow.
Where there was an element of like there's no air conditioning, and all these things that are you sort of expect as an American, and you don't have any of that. But you have this woman who is just sort of like everything is like draped in fabrics, and it's just really, it was a really cool sort of expression of who she is and what she's good at, which is making a comfortable home.
Yeah.
In our own house, I think we have a very like mid-century house in the hills. And we have one big living room, big kind of great room, which I think is a really nice room. But then off of that, adjacent to our bedroom, we have this little den that when we bought the house, the previous owner had used it as an office, and we kind of converted it and added bookshelves and millwork and a built-in banquette with Martin Lawrence Bullard fabric on it. And we don't use the room as much as I'd like, but it definitely is the room that makes me happiest, because it kind of has all our like mementos. Like there's sort of like everything on the bookshelf, whether it's like every book has been read. Every object has a story behind it. And I think, so I really enjoy kind of like spending time in that
And you have the
space.
view of the back, that pool, and
nice.
It's really, really beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But I agree. That room, every time we hang in there, which is not often, we're like, why don't we sit in this room?
Yeah.
Everyone's just like, so I assume you spend all your time in this room. And we're like, well.
Yeah.
But we try to prioritize it. It's a nice room. It's like it's painted like kind of like a dark moss green, so it has a very kind of like sort of cozy feel to it. I think that's like a special place in the house.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Last question.
Yes.
What is the first thing that you notice when you walk into a room? And from a PR standpoint, I want you to tell me about when you walk into an event space. The first thing that you notice.
Where the bar is.
Spectacular.
I was going to say. This is probably the truthful...
what do we know? So specific to events?
Yes.
Like industry events?
I mean, it's horrible because we're sort of like sociopathic on this level. It's like you learn how to like scan the room really quickly to find the people to see if there's clients there, to sort of like prioritize your approach to the event. Is like you just have to, I think you're a bit more strategic about it.
Because when we do go in, it's often, whether we put this on ourselves or if we do have clients there, it's who do we need to be introducing to who do we want to or need to be spending time with, who do we want to avoid completely. I mean, it's a multi-pronged approach. And I think other than that, we go to a lot of events. We're at a lot of events. We oversee a lot of events for clients. And I think what is interesting to me and what I always look for is depending on the client, depending on the brand, depending on, you know, whatever it is and what the purpose of that event is, how did they execute accordingly to have that messaging or those visuals out there? And what was interesting about it? Was it effective? Was it not effective? Because we go to dinners at times that are for a specific brand or product line. The product isn't there. And I'm like, okay, so that's an interesting, like, you know, it's great to host a dinner for 20 or 30 and have top editors, top designers and architects. But if you're not actually pushing out or having represented what you are, you know, wanting to show, wanting to pitch ultimately, then what for? So that's definitely something that I think I pretty quickly, and I think you do too. There's a lot of events that we walk into and 2 minutes in, we look at each other and are like, what exactly
sometimes,
are they trying
we've been to a few where you're just kind of confused.
Yeah.
But I also think there's probably like a level of care, let's just say this, that I appreciate. As to give Laurent some props, it's like, you know, whenever we've been here, when you do some of your fabulous events, it's like there's so much care sort of put into that experience that we always value and appreciate. You know, even going back to the RH Montecito gallery opening that we were at in December, you know, again, like they did a nice job in terms of like executing so you felt that everything was very thoughtful. And it was almost more, you know, more about like demonstrating, and I know this is kind of their thought process, it's demonstrating like the point of view. So it's not necessarily opening night party, it's not about like showing off your furniture, it's kind of like demonstrating the lifestyle that you're looking to sell.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was very much like the martini bar, the caviar, you know, all these sort of like high-end swanky stuff, you know, and I think that's what they're trying to sell is like that sort of aspirational sort of approach to life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. The two of you have just taught me so much. I don't know if you've like picked up on that, but I've got so many ideas. I'm about to do like a big brain dump after this where I'm like writing down everything. Okay. Like, and also over lunch, I'm going to pick your brain a little bit.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
We're here for it. Almost ready. I'm here for it.
Yeah. So we have lunch coming up. What did you make? Do you want to tell them, or do you want to just surprise them?
We just did the little French bistro, little roast chicken and roasted vegetables and a little green salad. You know,
Fabulous.
Perfect.
healthy French bistro.
Exactly.
Lunch.
New year,
And,
new you.
Exactly. But not to be like all your clients, but I love you guys.
We love you both too.
We love you too.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
guys.
you so much for
This
being
was so
here.
fun.
It's a pleasure to have you. And
Thank you.
Absolutely. This was fun.
let's eat. Yeah.
Yes.
Let's eat. Let's do it.